keep getting educated about this whole European thing.
English.
You're English, all right, all right. So anyways, but it is a pleasure to be here. I think that there's a significant difference in European bonsai and North American bonsai, and that is, I think that the European bonsai scene, that including the UK, tend to pursue bonsai with a little bit more intensity. And so for being a bonsai professional myself, that's very appealing to me, to get to come and work with a group of individuals and a group of a culture, bonsai culture, that's really striving for a higher level of bonsai quality. That was my goal when I went to Japan. It's what I'm trying to pursue in the United States. It's what I try to carry with me as I go places. And so today we've got a big piece of material that's really going to challenge me as an artist, technically and also creatively. And I'm hoping that you guys can help me with it a little bit too, because this isn't easy. This is not an easy piece of material. So if we could kind of work together today, I don't want you guys to just sit there and go mind numb. I want you guys to be involved in this session, because you have come from a long ways away. Use this as a learning tool. See how I approach a piece of material like this, how you might gain some ideas and perspectives, some techniques, some creative ideas on design. And let's see if we can't make something really fantastic for Peter here, because he has been very generous to bring me in from the United States, and I do appreciate it. I also want to thank Peter Warren. As Peter Snart said, Peter and I have been great friends. We were together in Japan. We used to prop each other up when we were kind of leaning towards that point of collapse as apprentices. A few beers and a night in Tokyo generally got it done, right? Rejuvenated the spirit and kept us going in our individual endeavors. So Peter's come and helped me out my garden in the United States quite a bit. He's become a very major pillar of American bonsai and helping raise the level in North America. And what he's doing here in the UK seems to be very effective. You guys are lucky to have him. So thank you, Peter, for all you've done for me. Appreciate it. Okay, so tears and sentimental things aside now, right? What's that? Let's get some work done. Let's get some work done, that's right. Have you guys all had a chance to see this tree? No, yeah, kind of. All right, I'm going to spin it around on the cart, not too fast, okay? I just want us all to have a really good handle of what this tree has to offer, okay? Because this is, again, not straightforward at all, right? If we look at the tree from this side, we've got fantastic deadwood. Immediate impression, oh, good deadwood. I love that. I love that. Of course I love deadwood. My master, deadwood was the milestone, right? The pillar of his bonsai creations, okay? But we've always got a few things we have to consider in design when we have deadwood, right? And one of the most significant things we've got to consider is, where does that living tissue originate, right? Where does the living tissue originate? Because if we cannot see the living vein from the base, a lot of times we lose the impact of that tree. We're not sure, is this valid, is this legitimate, is that the same tree, is this actually living? And we can't see that connection with this and the binding of that tree with the earth, right? And that's important to show. So when we look at this, even though we've got this really interesting deadwood from this side, right, there's a few other flaws that we have. We can't see the live vein. The live vein starts right here, okay? And we also have a very weak minimal base. Can you guys all see the negative space underneath this trunk here, right? So when we look at that, regardless of what we do, we're always going to lack that stability at the base. We lack that living vein. So even though we have fantastic deadwood there, I think it makes the most sense to pursue styling of this tree from this side. You guys agree? Yeah. Agree? Anybody want to say, no, I don't think so? Because you're welcome to. I definitely would love to hear your guys' comments. We good? Huh.
You say there's more foliage on the other side.
More foliage on the other side. Oh, man. So when I said this is a really tough piece of work, right, you just hit it right on the head, right? So all the foliage goes away from this front. Peter's getting ready to say hello. I'll let it do its thing. Okay. We've been doing this the past 2 days. What's that? Yeah, right, right. Okay, so the foliage is facing away from us, yeah? And in general, this tree is very, very large. Do you not agree? It's huge, right? Any one of us couldn't pick this up, I don't think. I don't know, maybe Dave was here yesterday to pick this up, other than that. Okay, so we've got to figure out a way to make this smaller, right? So the farther away from the trunk that the foliage is, the less important this trunk is. Okay? So we've got all of these features right here, right in this area. This is where the focal point of our tree is, yet the foliage is very far away. Can we get this foliage up into this area here? Is that possible? Is it possible?
It's the right technique,
Yep.
probably.
Oof. Do you have those techniques?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Same good.
Okay, so I think we can, but this is a very, very risky piece of work, particularly to do in front of you guys here, because failure, the high percentage of that failure is going to occur. Okay?
Staying right, what course with the Willowbog, staying with the book.
Oh, yeah, right. Can we all keep this a secret if it doesn't work? Okay, so what we got? What's that? Oh yeah, is this going on the internet? All right. So what we've got is we've got this living vein that goes along the back side of this piece of deadwood that cascades down into this portion of the tree. Okay. If we want to bring this section up, I don't know if you guys have seen this, and it's a little bit tough to see from where you're at now. I don't know if you've seen this, but this is a very, very thick piece of wood right here. Okay. So bending this piece of wood is probably not realistic. Right? Unless we wanted to hollow out a significant portion of the living vein, bend it, and even then it's super thick, right? The chances of success are very minimal. However, can we separate this living vein from the backside of this deadwood, therefore giving us flexibility in terms of this entire length, and be able to pull this up and twist that vein where we've separated it? Possibly, right? Possibly.
Yeah.
I'm banking on yes.
Yes, very careful.
I'm banking on yes, very carefully, right? Okay? So, we're going to make the major bend first. Anytime you do this kind of work, you can always have an idea, right? I would love it if this foliage were tucked right in here. We can make this crown and this cascading branch. We could shorten this so that the bottom of the tree is here, and now we've created a tree that's this big. I would love that. We would all walk home today shaking hands, talking about what a marvelous demonstration it was, how successful we've all been, how great the UK is, right? We're not sure we can do that. So, we're going to push the limits of what this tree has to offer within the respect of the tree, right? Within the respect of the tree. It doesn't do us any good to kill the tree, create a beautiful product, and then watch it turn brown and die. That's not what I'm interested in, okay? And I'm not here to flex any muscle and show you guys just what can be done and then go home and have it die. That doesn't do me any good, right? So we're going to push this as far as we possibly can. What I'm going to ask from you guys today is that you have a little bit of leniency if we can't get it as far as we want because we're respecting the health of the tree. Sound good?
Okay.
Okay, all right. Away we go. Okay, Peter, you want to? Okay, so I want to cut right on the threshold. I want to cut right on this threshold here. I'm going to cut right up to about here so that we give ourselves enough room for it to move. Yeah, just watch it. It's not going to last very long. So that's all the battery we've got. They couldn't find the charger this morning. Huh? Yeah, I'm going to cut up, and then I'm going to come back in and change my angle, okay? So now I'm going to come here and mark it there. Yeah, I'm in a little bit. guys are just gonna have to bear with us, okay?
Unless anyone's got to do all that to charge
Wouldn't
it
it be
back.
quicker doing it with different things and picking it up like that?
Here's the thing. I don't want to take this away,
Oh, right.
right? Because if I take this away, if we remove this, now all of a sudden you see all of the superficial work.
Right.
And for the rest of this tree's life, you'll see all of the superficial work. So if you can leave this dead portion in the foreground, separate the live portion, bend the live portion, and still have the dead in the foreground, you'll never know that it was artificially done.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
So,
You want something wrong with it, so everything, and turn it in box just to see what you're going to be doing, where's it going to be put to.
sure, yeah. We're gonna hope that this whole section, so here's the thing, guys. When we start bending stuff, we've got to look at the plane in which we bend, yeah? Okay? If we want this branch to come up to here, it means that this live vein has to flex like this, right? Which means that when I grab this portion here to bend it, I've actually got to bend and twist so that this live vein moves like this, which is why I'm separating it here.
Right.
So if we just took this and we bent this straight up, your vein is sitting like this. It'll tear just like that. It'll just tear in half. Okay? You can't bend against a vein. Now you can bend like this all you want, right? But you can't bend like this. It just tears. It's like a piece of paper, right? So the reason that we're doing this is so that when we take this, if we twist this like this vein has the ability to roll as opposed to just tear, okay? It's a very fundamental aspect of big work like this, big heavy work, freeing up that strip and figuring out how you're going to rotate it as opposed to just bend it. So what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to just cut up along this living vein here, again, leaving this deadwood intact so that I can disguise my work. So I just did a photo shoot for Bonsai Focus. It'll be out in May, June, and it was a Sabina juniper that was maybe this tall, and the trunk was down here, and we took all the foliage and we brought it down to the trunk. But in order to disguise that work, there's a piece of deadwood with the live vein attached. We separated the live vein from the deadwood, right? Now it would have been easier to just take the deadwood off. It would have been out of the way, very clean, could have applied raffia very comfortably, but we left that deadwood on. It added another hour to the work, okay? But now you can't see that bend because that deadwood is there to disguise it. So it's all a level of craftsmanship in terms of this manner of work. So you guys are just gonna have to bear with us. If you need coffee or tea or restroom, or you guys wanna talk. I'm just gonna focus on getting this done, and then you guys get to watch all the exciting. Okay, so we've separated it all the way up to here. Now I think we're gonna need a little bit more, but before we really know, we've gotta make a significant move and see how this is gonna work for us. So we may need to thin this out a little bit. We may need to take a chunk of wood out of here so that we can have access to this living vein. All of these things have to be worked out as we go. So anybody that came today thinking this was just going to be kind of like a mild, enjoyable demo, you guys missed the boat.
I killed them.
Yeah. Last night Peter and I were looking at this tree, and he said, I think I've grossly underestimated what tomorrow is going to be. So anyways, let's give it a try. Yeah. So we've got some clamps, and we'll go with thick wire.
Where are you?
So let's just go with one, and it'll hook here. And then what I really want to do is go from the farthest possible location here, which is going to be this branch underneath here of the jack. Let me get some rubber. So whenever we used to do this work in the workshop with Mr. Kimura, of course we're all sitting there working in our different spots in the workshop, and you always had an eye on what he was doing. You always could see, out of the corner of your eye, or you were always looking up. And when a tree like this would come in, he would sit and look at it for a while, and you'd be watching, and then he would always say, "Chotto," which means just give me a little bit of attention, more or less. And everybody would hop up, right? It's like an explosion in the workshop because everybody wanted to be a part of the really interesting work. And you'd be really excited to get to do something like this because obviously it's what you see in the books. Well, for me it was anyways. I don't know how everybody else felt. It's like what you see in the books. But when you helped him with stuff like this, he expected you to be predicting every move that he was going to make before he made it. And it was really tough when you were a younger apprentice because you didn't know what he was going to do. And most of the time you just ended up getting in the way. And then he'd get mad and then he'd kind of kick you out of the workshop or something. You have to go pull weeds, or if it was the winter time, you'd go back to the greenhouse and clean or something. But you always wanted to be part of it, right? This is what everybody was there for. But once you got to be an older apprentice, and you understood a little bit more about what was going to happen, then all of a sudden you could more or less do the work for him because you had a real similar mentality about what needed to happen. But he used to always say, this work is 90% of bonsai. 90% of styling is the setting of the structure, this major work. And I always kind of took offense to that because we spent so much time wiring, right? You'd think, that's kind of disrespectful. But he's right, because this is the work that makes the major changes in trees, right? This is how we're going to bring all this foliage up to that trunk. If we can't do this, how are we ever supposed to really, really improve bonsai, improve a tree? Super heavy wire. I have my doubts this jack is going to hold up. So I've been told it's custom fabricated and guaranteed.
Bunch of language.
Hang on just a second before you type it. We're going to put it to the test today. I've never seen a jack this small work. But if it does, you guys all need to get one. Anybody have any questions? If you guys have questions, or if you guys have ideas or thoughts or whatever, just throw them out there.
What will you do if it doesn't work?
What will I do if it doesn't work?
Right.
Make it work. It will work. There's always a way to make something bendable. And the safe way too. There's a safe way. There's multiple, that was one of the things that I've really tried to improve upon after coming back from Japan is sort of increasing the number of options that I have to do this kind of work, because sometimes it just doesn't work. But there's always a way to get it done. And it doesn't change the fact that this has to get close to that for this to be a good tree. It will not change that. Okay, Peter, you want to twist up here and I'm going to watch?
I'll start getting hard to.
That's the easy job. Go. Okay.
Getting busy.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm good. Keep it going.
Slow down a bit.
What would be that?
changing the oil on her.
Good.
Oh, the jack slipped? Oh, okay. Hang on, let's lock it off here then.
Okay.
Just leave it right there, because it won't be able to. So what we'll have to do is.
It's gonna come this way, the jack.
Right, yeah. Okay, just hold it. There's, Masakuni makes this jack, it's like a double clamp, and it's got two rods on it, and then it's got one that pushes. It's like a, I don't know, it's like a $900 jack or something. And one time we were doing this, and if the wire is not perfectly in the center, and the jack gets twisted inside the two rails, and it'll lock itself in place. And so I'm twisting and I'm twisting and I'm twisting, and Mr. Kimura is watching the trunk on this white pine bend, and it's bending and bending and bending and bending. And all of a sudden I can't twist anymore, and I look inside because there's branches over the jack, and it's completely jackknifed inside these two rails, right? So I'm thinking, well, now I've got to undo it. So I'm trying to undo it, but I can't budge it. And he can't budge it, and we take a hammer to it, and we had to take a power saw and cut through the metal and cut it off. Of course, that's a $900 jack, right? So this was a week after I had broken his $500 Masakuni large wire cutters. I thought that was the end of everything. One of many failures. Looks like it's going to bend right where we want it though. Okay,
I'll soldier through.
like bodybuilding. Is that jack meant to twist?
No. no, it is. It's got a adjustable thing on there.
So I worked with Kevin Wilson. And in Sacramento in October, California. He was at the Golden State Convention together, and that was an interesting experience. Do you guys know Kevin Wilson?
Never did.
All quality, yeah. I had a really good time with Kevin.
You like to drink this, Kevin?
He was good at drinking. There aren't too many people that I would call masters of alcohol.
He likes to drink dirty beer.
He's retired.
We're all
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
He's retired.
I am officially retired from alcohol consumption. Until this evening.
Until tomorrow. The question is, do we come up along this or do we come along the back side of this? Let's come up along the back side.
Where's Mr. Snortley for lay down, is there? Really?
Hold that just right now.
No, it's not going to touch me again.
Okay, go ahead and let it go. Yeah. Okay. Fix the jack.
Use the other one, yeah. So that's what I'm slip.
Oh, okay. Alright.
Ryan,
Yes.
that first cut you made, how did you decide how far along that?
Right, yeah. Good question. How did I decide how far? So you always want to give yourself more than you think, right? But if you get too overzealous and you cut it up to here, then you're going to have an artificial incision all the way up to here, right? So anytime you make a big bend, the farther the distance that you have this big bend to be compensated for on the live vein, the greater the chance of success, right? So I cut as far as I thought I needed to cut to see if I was going to have flexibility. Now when we're bringing this up, we've already brought this up a long ways. I don't know if you guys realize how far this has come, right? And you could hear this popping a little bit here. That's the wood saying, yeah, I don't like this. I don't like it, but I'm gonna go ahead and flex anyways, okay? So we're gonna try to get this, all of this, here. That's where we want it, right here. We want it in front of this whole piece of wood. Then we're gonna take this and we're gonna bend this tree or incline this tree forward because we still have this negative space here. Bring this tree forward so that this now is at the top and we're gonna have the soil level right here. It brings more of this dead wood towards us. So if we can get this here, we bring this forward a little bit more, it's gonna bring the whole crown of this tree right towards us, bring this dead wood out so that we can see this interesting part. We're gonna push this back so that it's not in front of us, and all of a sudden we've got a good tree, right? Love it. So let's go, I'm gonna cut this a little bit here. Okay, and give me the length. Those Mac Daddy comments. One second. Make sure it's a bigger issue too now. Alright, let's go. So another thing that we've got to consider, as this rotates now, we've got a flat cut, as this rotates, this is going to start butting up against that, yeah? You're going to get this rotation like this because we're pulling this like so, we're going to get contact here.
Yeah.
So we've got to be aware of every single place where failure can take place, right?
No, I didn't realize I get that. I said I don't want to.
No. It was right here.
It widened a bit there, where
Yeah, it got wide, yeah. Here. It's just an internal wood. Yeah, this whole thing twisted, but I think it was this. Yeah.
damage to the living tissue.
Let's keep going.
It'll widen if there's damage.
No. Keep going. Okay, so here's what we got, talking exactly about what you asked, right? Now that pop that you heard was just a fracture in the edge of this where this live vein is still attached to the dead wood. Okay, so we got an instant separation. We need more release here. So we'll just keep cutting up this. As we see this tension start to spread, we don't want to leave this tear to just take its own path, right? We want to dictate the path and have total control. So we'll just continue to cut up this. Can you guys see this little tear starting to spread here? So that pop was probably something on this internal. See how we still have this pink heartwood here? That pink heartwood is going to pop, right? It's going to pop, it's going to crack, it's going to tear. As long as we don't see anything on the exterior living tissue, it's not a big deal, right? It has no consequence whatsoever to the success of this operation. Yeah. Right here on this side. You see it over there. That distance there, not bad, yeah?
Yeah.
How much more then, Ryan, to come up?
What's that?
Is there much more to come up?
How we're starting to get into that zone of like how greedy.
Keep going on. You've all got faith, Ryan.
You've all got faith?
Right.
Yeah, I don't want to ruin that.
You do know what Mr. Smart's nickname is?
What's that?
Mr. Greedy. Right, stuff this on.
Yeah. Go ahead and elongate it again. And then we'll cut it one more time as we go. So here's what we got now, right? You ready? If I could blow this up for you, I would. We have a fracture that started here. Now it's running horizontally on the live vein. Okay? So what that means is, anytime you've got tissue like this and that tissue starts to pull apart, as long as you've got this joint here, as long as this stays connected, you can have the tissue tear quite a bit and still maintain success. Okay? But you've always got to say, how far can we go, for one, and two, as this tree settles and stretches and hangs out, is that going to pop open, right? And that happens from time to time, particularly with yew and with spruce, okay? So even now, just sitting here as we are, I can hear this. It's kind of, where does that stop, right? That's the question. So, although I'm tempted to go a little bit further, I think this is where we stop for today. Right? I think this is where we stop. We've come quite a ways. We've gotten it up a lot farther than we thought it could be. And now we can incline it and we can pull the rest of this forward on a different plane of force. And see if we can't get this closer to this, maybe bending it in here as opposed to from right here. Okay? Make sense? Right, so we've always got to respect the tree. Came up a long ways though, yeah? Okay. Alright, so Let's work on the angle. Now that's not to say that later today I might not say, hey, let's go again. We'll leave all the wire in place. Let's see with what we got now, how close we can get this to where we want it to be. What do you guys think? Okay, good, bad, yay, nay? I'm kind of thinking we want to come over into here. What do you think? So this is very two-dimensional, right? Like flat. Give it a little bit more dimension. You're looking at it from here so that you see this coming at you at an angle. Right before this starts to poke you in the eye. What do you think? You guys tell me.
On the back. Yeah.
Like right in here. Yeah? What do you guys think? You guys came from a long ways away, yeah? Alright, what do you think? Other way. Like right in here. Yeah? Right before this is starting to come at you? Okay, cool. That's what I think too. Right in here. Okay, so we've got a lot of branches here. We're trying to make this small tree, right? Smaller the better. More bonsai-like. Let's remove some of this. What do you say? First things first, do we need this big branch down here?
Yeah.
Do we need this?
There we go.
What do you think, Ben?
No.
We might. Peter Snart, what do you think? Do we need this big branch here?
Not if we're going to make it smaller.
Yeah, if we're going to make it smaller.
That's a good one.
Oh, the washer up has turned up, thank goodness for that.
Father, January, never, ever, ever again.
I thought you were in charge.
You've got no smell.
I know.
Oh, that's
Hello, darling, how are you? Okay.
What do we think about that? Mistake? Better? Definitely smaller, right? Okay, so here's the reason that I made that decision. Okay? I've got this big beautiful branch right here. Okay, this is going to come down and this is going to be the branch that fills this position. The only difference is significantly smaller, significantly higher up. So this entire distance of this foliage crown just got significantly less, right? It's a mistake to think that this is how you handle every tree, but for this tree, to decrease the size of this tree, that's how we have to handle this tree. Every tree is going to be different. It's how we have to do this to make sure that this gets smaller. Goal is to make it smaller, okay? Now we've got this guy here. We've got some very, very significant branches here. And we've got essentially two apexes in this tree. Okay, we've got this one. I don't know if you guys can see this. We've got this big, thick branch that runs out over here and forms this major foliage mass here. Okay? And then we've got this big, thick branch here that runs out over here and forms this major foliage mass here. Now my feeling is structurally one of these has to go. Okay? Because we've got two branches that look like this. One of them has to be the apex, one of them doesn't. Right? Now here's the scary thing. You take one of these off, and you make the wrong decision, you're in trouble, right? We're going to start out conservative. How's that?
Can you move the one on the right down a bit? Like the first one you mentioned?
This one here.
No, the one.
This one. Yeah, we're going to have to. Yeah, we're going to have to. We're going to have to. Because we can't have the apex all the way out here. We don't want it all the way out here. Problem is the trunk is still all the way out here. So I'm kind of reasoning through this with you guys, right? I saw this tree for the first time yesterday afternoon, right before dinner. It would be very easy and tempting to make the tree out here. Right? But that's not the best tree. It's not the best tree. We're here to make the best tree. I'm fighting with myself.
What's
Better
holding
tree,
that
yeah.
one coming down the front?
This one here.
That's £500 on the floor.
I think we're you want to take it home?
No,
Cash in.
no.
So this one here, I'm thinking maybe we bring this out into here, right? All of these are going to be reduced significantly. Okay? Now we've got our apex. It's probably going to occur from this branch or from this upper branch here if we want to bring it over. And we're going to fold this whole thing forward a little bit. So now maybe the apex occurs right here underneath this. Okay? If we can get it underneath that, we can disguise some of this, push this length back. We've essentially done the same thing. It's just visual as opposed to structural. So this bend, this will go farther in the future. It's not going to happen today because it's still popping and moving. So now I've got to decrease the width of this back, right? All of these branches back here. You see how big all this is. The back can't ever overpower the front. Start taking this back a little bit. Now with you, when we're dealing with you, okay, we've always got to leave enough green to be drawing sap to that branch. It's very similar to a juniper. If we don't have enough green on there, we start losing sap flow. You'll see them gradually decline. This isn't the most ideal time to be working on you in terms of significant pruning of the finer branches, but it's a great time to be working on you in terms of styling, right? This is a fantastic time, particularly for the Cuspidata, right before it starts to push, okay? So if this tree is kept in a cold frame or whatnot, and we get temperatures during the daytime that are around, what would we say, 5-6 Celsius, which would be around 40 degrees Fahrenheit, then metabolic activity starts taking place and patching all the things that we're doing. If this goes back out into freezing weather, it will die.
I think you should sleep with it.
What's it?
Go in the bedroom.
No, the workshop.
Put it in the hammock.
How's it attached?
It's a plan.
So, yeah.
Keep it warm there.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes, if you approach a piece of material, do you always try and create the image out of what's in front of you, or do you realise sometimes you might have to let a bit grow?
Oh, you always have to plan on letting it grow. Always, always.
So sometimes you plan ahead, thinking, I'll let that section grow to the place I want it, if you physically couldn't bend it to the place you want it.
Somebody in the workshop walked away with my scissors. You mean when I'm styling now?
Yeah, if you approach a piece of material,
Uh-huh.
would you always look at it and think, this is what I've got, I can create an image from that, or would you sometimes think, we need to let this section of the tree grow to create the best tree image?
No, absolutely. There are times where you have to let it grow. Not every tree is ready to be made into a final tree, right? But this tree is beyond ready. Right? This work should have been done a long time ago. This is extremely, extremely thick branching now. This has been allowed to grow and it's rambunctiously healthy. The longer this grows, the harder it's going to be to do this work, right? Because it gets thicker, it gets healthier, it gets stiffer. And when you start talking about structural work, the less initiative we take right now to move this structurally, the harder it's going to be to move it structurally in the future. Because, again, it's going to get healthier, it's going to get more foliage, it's going to grow, it's going to thicken, it's going to have scar tissue now. right? All of those things are problematic in terms of dealing with. So people always say, you know, we'll bend it a little bit and then we'll wait. We'll bend it a little bit and then we'll wait. That's actually a counterproductive method to working unless you're bending it to the max that it can be bent within the respect of the tree and then going back again and pushing it further, right? So if you're pushing it like that, then you're actually, you're doing what you can within the ability of the tree to survive. But if you're not, if you're just being conservative and saying, I'm going to go a little bit at a time, it's actually harder to get that tree to where you want it to go, right? So, and two, you have to understand, my school of thought, and what I was trained to do, was to take a tree and expedite the process of making it the best tree it possibly could be. Right? And Mr. Kimura is not a patient guy. He doesn't like waiting. And so, when we started doing work like this, the idea was to get it as far as it could go and toe that line. But in order to be able to do that, that's not what I'm telling people to do, it's not the advice I'm giving people. In order to be able to do that, you have to have a skill set that's very, very large and expansive, and an understanding of aftercare, an understanding of technique, and understanding of aesthetics. If you arm yourself with those, then you have the potential to do a little bit more, right? So everybody's got a different potential in terms of what they can accomplish. And I'm not very patient either, because North America needs better trees now. Right? Europe had the ginkgos, Europe has the Nolanders. North America, what do we have? Right? Now we've got several professionals coming back from Japan, and you're going to see North America really start to take off. So I'm just going to get this out of the way because we're going to use this as a guy wire branch. So if we leave this as a gin, it will forever be a gin. Or if we leave it with bark, it will forever be with bark. Europeans, you guys like to carve, right? Power tools? Power tools? Yeah? So Mr. Kimura liked to carve, obviously. I spent 5 of the 6 years that I was there doing all of the cleanup carving for him. And when I came back to the United States, I said, I'm never going to carve again. I was tired of carving. I've since learned why he carved, because it saves your hands immensely. And he used to have to stop work because he'd have arthritis in his hands. But if you can do work on deadwood with hand tools, it gives it such a better texture and feeling, and tearing and splitting and the exposure of the grains. It really is the best way to create deadwood. It takes a little bit longer.
Could you say a bit about the energy flow from the design?
Energy flow from the design in terms of the movement of the tree.
Yeah.
This tree, so if we're looking at it from where you're at, if you're looking at it from here, which is slightly offset, slightly two-dimensional, okay, it comes down and the tree comes back up. The beautiful part about this is that it has this movement back here, right? So we chose this as an apex because we pick up one more movement in the tree. So if this comes back here and then our apex comes here, we're going to drop this down as the main branch. We come down, up, apex here, main branch down into here. And we're going to shorten this. Remember, we want this to be short. Short, compact. Is that what you were looking for?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, so I'm going to do some general pruning. I'm just going to talk. If you guys have questions, ask me. And then we'll go about setting the structure, rafting these branches, and getting this styled out. I'm more than happy to talk to you guys, so don't hesitate to fire away.
You've got a lot of dead wood on the bottom going down. You leave quite a bit of that to be in proportion to the dead wood.
This?
Yeah.
No, we're going to take off most of it. We're going to take off most of it. Once we've styled those bottom branches and we see where that bottom layer exists, then we're going to take off whatever is below it so that we don't increase the length of this tree. So deadwood's good. Deadwood's good. Too much deadwood is obnoxious though, right? It's like your Sabina, right? There's just so much there. The deadwood was the focal point when really there's a fantastic trunk behind it all. So we want the focal point to be here, right? Now let me ask you guys, how do you guide people's eyes when they look at your tree? What dictates where people's eyes go?
Most striking feature.
Trunk line.
Any other ideas? Anybody else care to venture a guess?
Base.
What guides people's eyes?
Well,
Color. Color of what?
your whites of your deadwood against the trees.
When you see a tree for the first time, what's the first thing you notice? Not in winter. Not in winter.
foliage.
The foliage. Very good. Excellent. The foliage. You notice the green. For whatever reason, we're drawn to something that's alive. Okay? We're not drawn to something that's dead. We're drawn to something that's alive. We see all of the other details afterwards. Okay? When you talk about bonsai, you talk about guiding people's eyes through your design. The green is what guides people's eyes. Okay? So if you have an area of the tree that's more valuable than another, and you take the green closer to that area, you exponentially increase the attention that's given to that area. Period. Very simple, right? Bonsai design can be as complicated as you want it to be or as simple as you want it to be. But if you keep that fundamental concept in mind, bonsai design becomes very, very, very easy. Use the foliage to guide people's eyes. So we got this closer to that deadwood because we said at the very beginning, this is the focal point of the tree, right? The farther away we have details from the focal point of the tree, the less emphasis is placed on the focal point of the tree. The farther away from the focal point of the tree the green is, the less emphasis is placed on the focal point of the tree. Very, very easy. So, when you read all these articles, or you see these articles about these trees being compacted, right? Why are they compacting that? Why are they compacting the tree?
Get the foliage closer.
The foliage closer to the features that they value. Absolutely. Okay? Now let me ask you something else. Okay? This goes hand in hand with this same conversation. When would you not want to compact a tree?
Probably when it's literati,
Okay? Why?
because the green's all on the top of the tree and there's always a long way from the top to the bottom.
Okay, so what is the focal point of the tree at that point?
The taper.
The trunk, and in particular, what aspect of the trunk?
Tape of the trunk.
Movement of the trunk.
The movement, the thinness, the
Yeah.
taper, right? So now all of a sudden, if you take all of it back to the base, if you try to compact that, you lose that focal point,
Yeah.
right? Your foliage is your branch is relatively short on literati, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time. Or they always come back towards the trunk.
Yeah.
Yeah? There's a reason for that. Directing your eye back to the portion that adds the value. That's right. Very good.
Yeah.
So I used to sit in the workshop when I was in my, basically, once I got to the 4.5 year mark, so I was the youngest of 6 apprentices when I started. By the 2.5 year mark, I was the only apprentice. Everybody else had quit or graduated. And I was by myself for 9 months. And then we started getting younger apprentices coming in to study. And by the time I was at the 4 year mark, I had 3 younger apprentices, so there's 4 of us back. And at that point, because I had spent 9 months, we had to downsize the number of clients that we were doing work for, because they're just too much work. Mr. Kimura and myself, we were the only people there. Too much work. You can't do the same amount of client work. We used to have a truckload of trees every day come in, and we were continually cycling trees because he had 6 apprentices doing work. I was by myself, we couldn't do that anymore. So, once we had 4 apprentices again, he started upping his workload. And I started finding myself in the workshop every single day. Every day I would get to work. I would say good morning to Mr. Kimura, and then he would ask me if I had finished the tree that I was working on the night before. Whether he knew it was finished or not, he would ask if it was finished, which was an insinuation to say, then you better finish it, right? So my job was to be in the workshop. And so for the 5th, 6th, halfway through, for 2.5 years, I barely left the workshop. My job was to wire trees. Wire trees. And I still got a lot of experience doing other stuff because he needed help with the technical work that the younger apprentices weren't quite ready for. But during that time, I had a whole lot of time to think about bonsai and what I was learning from him and what it all meant. Right? So you start trying to quantify 6 years of an education. That's pretty complicated stuff. But I started thinking about how do I go back to the United States and teach people how to design bonsai? How do you design bonsai? How do I design bonsai? How does Mr. Kimura design bonsai? Right? How does that actually happen? That process, how do you make that concrete for somebody to grasp and understand and be able to potentially duplicate if they arm themselves with the correct techniques to be able to enable these design decisions, right? And so for 2.5 years, I sat there and thought about all of these techniques and all of these concepts, and he never actually laid out any fundamental thought process that he used to go through. But I would watch him look at trees, and he would handle trees, and he would make decisions. And then I started doing a lot of work on my own trees at night when I would go home from the garden, and I would handle trees, and I would look at trees, and I would see how I was making decisions, and you start to come to this realization. And I was really lucky too, because I had a professor in college. I was a horticulture major. I had a professor in college, and I studied landscape design with him. He was an artist, and he was also a phenomenal landscape designer, and he was the first person who ever pointed out how you apply artistic concepts to plants, right? This design, it's line, form, shape, contour, texture, color, all of that stuff, right? We all know about it, we've all heard it in school or in art class or whatever. Have we ever applied it to bonsai, these fundamental concepts? We started figuring out how these fundamental concepts applied, and what you'll realize, if you start thinking about bonsai as an art form, that all bonsai is a series of lines, right? Series of lines. So you ask, how does the energy flow work in this tree? Well, you've got a very fundamental line, right? That fundamental line is always the trunk line. And then you've got all of these other lines, and these are branch lines. How do these branch lines conform to the trunk line, right? But if you go beyond that, and you start talking about, now we're using native material. You guys live in England, you've got fantastic oaks, you've got fantastic examples of deciduous trees out in the fields. As we were driving up here, I was looking at these thinking, my goodness, this is fantastic, right? What are the quintessential, the fundamental lines that occur in those trees? So when we start talking about creating bonsai that represent the natural environment or reflect something about our native environment where we come from, right, we've got this naturalistic style that's preached by a lot of people. Is it actually practiced correctly, right? Are they capturing the quintessential line that occurs in these trees that give them the characteristic we identify them with, right? How does a pine look, right? Always a drop angle if we're talking about a high alpine tree. What about a Scots pine, right? Maybe they have an up, out. Maybe this is obtuse here, right? First movement up and then out, up, out, right? How does an oak look? Up, out, and then maybe the tips go down a little bit, okay? Or a deciduous tree, a maple, up, down because of the weight, right? So every tree has a fundamental characteristic. Can you quantify those lines and duplicate them in bonsai? That's what dictates your success. So when you talk about Japanese bonsai, did they think that far? I don't know, right? You guys have any questions? Am I boring you to tears?
Do you draw a picture before you start working on a tree like this? Or do you have a picture in your head and then work as, and does it become, do you create it as you're doing it?
No, never. Work like this can't be haphazard, right? You have to have a very fundamental concept of what you want. However, and I said this when we started, we're going to see how far we can bend this before we actually start removing branches or talking about design, because a major move like this changes everything. It changes the balance of the tree, it changes the location of the foliage, it probably changes which branch was going to be the apex. All of those things shift. So you make that move first knowing the general concept in your mind, and then you create the image after that. So now, as I eliminated these branches, of course I created this as, I cut this off, right? We want to decrease the size of this tree. Now this is going to become my main branch, okay? So now I'm starting to put all of those pieces together. But if I drew this before we started, and then if I drew it now, it would be the same tree. It just would be a lot more detailed now. Plus, when you come to Europe, it's a bad idea to draw. Because there's so many other people that can draw much better. Mark Nolanders was in Denver in June for the ABS BCI convention. And we were on stage together, a dual demo. And of course he draws fantastic, right? He even draws the little accent grass and the little display stands. I mean, it's, you know, to stand there and draw next to him would be just absolutely, it would be a poor representation, right? I knew better. The first time I came to Europe and demoed at the Nolanders, Michele Andolfo was on stage with me from Italy, and he drew this big, elaborate picture as well, and that's not what I'm going to do. I'll look like a fool up here. Now, I do like to draw, though. I really do like to draw.